This is Orlando News Now.
Florida officials calling for action when it comes to that nasty green algae. We just heard Beth talking about that, but instead Florida votes to allow more chemicals in our water. This is an interesting one. I posted this on my Facebook page the other day talking about this governing board saying, look, we are going to go ahead and pass these new measures. Most people were horrified, but I had a couple people who said, oh, no, read the fine print. It's actually fine. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about it.
Yeah, so that last point is debatable. You know, the funny thing about this to me is this is a board practically no one has ever heard of, and now they are making decisions about how many toxins can be in the water. And I've got my colleague Scott Maxwell here to talk about this. Scott, you've written some about this board just a couple weeks ago, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And these, at the time, these standards were up for review. Since then, what's happened? They've actually met, yes?
Yeah, they did. And back up to make the point you did. You were right that no one's heard of the Environmental Regulation Commission in Florida, mainly because we don't regulate the environment in Florida. In fact, this board has not even met for 2 solid years. And then finally, what the state officials wanted to do is they wanted to allow more carcinogens into the water. And I think there are probably some people who are listening going, Maxwell's, I always think he's a little loopy, but he's a little loopier than normal. No, there's actually a proposal to raise the amount of cancer-causing agents into Florida's drinking water supply. And we're talking about like doubling the amount of benzene, a byproduct of fracking that can cause leukemia, which we generally like to avoid. Tetrachloroethylene, which can cause bladder cancer. It's been, I think, in dry cleaning. The amount they want to raise the acceptable levels by 2,500%. And the idea being that polluters need to have this byproduct come out, and they think it's now safer. And so for the first time in 2 years, Rick Scott's environmental board came together to hold a meeting, and they voted and they passed these levels allowing higher levels.
Now I want to hone in on something here because we both know the board met last week. There was a good amount of coverage of it. I couldn't help but notice that I believe the vote was almost a tie. It was the standards passed by a single vote. And the thing that really jumped out to me is that there are actually 2 empty seats on this board. There is not. There's supposed to be a representative of the environment, and there's supposed to be a representative of our local governments on this board that nobody's ever heard of. But those 2 seats have been vacant for a year.
Yes. So you look at the numbers of a 3-2 vote and think if there was somebody who was supposed to, and by the way, this isn't my idea or your idea. State statute says this board is supposed to have an environmental, that the environmentalists might not think more cancer-causing agents in your groundwater supply would be a good idea. So the governor left that position open. He left the position for a government affairs, and then, as you said, it passed by a 3-2 margin. That probably wouldn't have happened. One of the more amusing things, or I thought, was there was actually a guy, a 26-year-old PhD student from Stanford, who right after he saw the 3 votes for, he walked up to the dais and said, since you have not put anybody in the environmental seat, I am here to speak for the environment.
He just volunteered himself. I guess that's how we're doing it.
He got up there and he said, I'm going to make a stand for the environment, and they said that's very nice, and then security escorted him out so they could boost the carcinogens in our water.
Now, what are representatives on this board saying? I imagine they have some answers to try to explain away or justify this action.
Yeah, and it's really complicated. If they talk about what's an accepted level of these things, theoretically, the amount of carcinogens we're talking about in the water, it doesn't go straight into your body. It's supposed to get filtered by utilities. Now, one of the questions, and that's what these board members will say, is that, well, we can have a little bit. You've always had a little bit of these carcinogens in your water. Our science is now better, and we can filter things better. So as we've improved things, it's time to update them. That's what they call. And they also stress that they are regulating some new chemicals. That's a good thing. It's the increase. I think there's generally a thought that says, why would we ever want to allow more carcinogens in the water? And that's the answer I don't think board members have a great answer for, except to say that our technology is capable of getting it out. But as you mentioned, as I think our images showed, this is all set against the backdrop of a state that is choked with not just algae, but toxic algae over the state. So it's just not a good time to be clean water in the state of Florida.
Yeah, and I've talked to some people recently who have been there and have actually smelled this stuff over on the east coast of Florida, and it is it is some nasty stuff.
It looks like a river of snot and
Absolutely.
smells worse. Yes.
Yeah, and it's when you hear the people describe it, and folks who work at marinas who are having to wear masks, you know, you really it really makes you wonder
Absolutely.
why we wouldn't take a step toward cleaning the water.
And now they do, and we won't go on forever, but I will say now they do, and this is Florida's cycle. It is to have an option to pollute things, to have some environmentalists say, wait, no, this is a bad idea. The politicians say, no, go ahead and pollute it anyway, but then come right back and spend gobs of money. We are spending $8 billion, that's billion with a B dollars cleaning up the Everglades right now. So voters put these folks into office, they foul the land, voters then get taxed to clean it up, and when you ask why is it happening, one of the questions I sometimes ask people is, well, how many times have you cast a vote based on the environment? If it's not one of your top priorities, well, that's why you're paying $8 billion to clean up the Everglades right now.
Right, and it may be something with these awful fish kill pictures and dead manatee pictures and snotty water pictures, as you said, maybe people start to take that.
It does seem like people are noticing it because it's hard to miss. Yeah.
So there you have it, Amy. You know, there's a lot going on with water in the state of Florida. I think it's something we have to be really aware of, because to me, when you start messing with the environment here in Florida, which is what we often sell our state on, you're messing with people's wallets.
It's just, to me, it's mind-blowing that we are watching this situation in South Florida where this water is putrid. And then 2 years go by, and then we have this board vote to put. It's mind-blowing. It makes absolutely no. It's completely counterintuitive.
It is, and I think that most people feel the same way you felt. That's actually what the guy who went up on the board said. He said, you know, I know it was a sort of a risky or brave thing he did, but he said, but I don't think I'm voicing a sentiment that's any different than what most Floridians like you are feeling.
It's scary stuff, guys. Well, we're going to have to do a better job of covering it for sure. Who else is going to do it? Who else?